Strategy and change management. When thinking about changing organizations, many people think purely about the process, that is, those things that will be constant from time to time, organization to organization, and circumstance to circumstance. However, it's been my experience that there needs to be additional questions to make when you're considering change that depends upon the specific circumstances of what your organization needs to do. Among these questions are, is this the right change to make? Who will organize? What will they organize? And what might the future hold? What changes are you contemplating to be successful in possible scenarios for the future? What are our goals, strategies, mission, and measures? What big changes do we need to make to be successful? And what small changes do we need to make? How do we get people on board? And what is the detailed plan for everything? This last step is known as stakeholder analysis and project management. To help our clients, we have developed the Organized Change Strategic Planning and Change Management model. In this model, the first step is to answer what we call the framework questions. These questions are those that should be made up front to decide the course of action. Some of these include who the steering committee should be, what initial assessments should happen, deciding on the scope of change, how the steering committee will gain consensus, how do we measure implementation, and how do we ensure the success of our change effort. This group must then define the choice of level of organizational change, what we will describe in a bit. Then determine the goals, strategies, methods, measurement system, the implementation plan, and the actual implementation. During this process, there may be additional assessments, an emphasis on teamwork, as well as additional training. As shown in the previous diagram, one of the most important questions that can be asked at the beginning of organizational change is how much change is necessary and what kind of techniques can be used to change the organization. These can be in 4 broad categories, ordered by the power of each technique. Level 1 methods concern changing and anticipating the future. This is often known as scenario planning. Level 2 techniques have to do with refining and defining the mission and core competencies, otherwise known as SWOT analysis. Level 3 techniques fundamentally change business processes, and Level 4 techniques incrementally change business processes. Just because we can define these methods and techniques into 4 categories doesn't tell us much about when to use them. The graph here gives you something of an idea. On the x-axis, you can see the severity of a problem based upon the assessment the steering committee does can range from low to high. You can also see the y-axis goes from a problem that only affects a few people to a problem that affects the whole company or organization. When a problem only affects a relatively few number of people and the severity of the problem is relatively low and there's relatively little urgent need for sudden change, Level 4 techniques are appropriate. Such things as hiring, firing, and training people, as well as systemic incremental change such as Six Sigma or total quality management. If the severity of the problem affects a fair proportion of the organization and it affects several groups, Level 3 changes might be necessary. These Level 3 changes might include restructuring, major policy changes, or significant efforts to change selection and reward systems in the organization. Based upon an assessment, if the severity of a problem is high and it affects most of the organization, Level 1 and 2 changes may be necessary. As we talked about before, these Level 1 and 2 changes are in the realm of redefining a mission, conducting a SWOT analysis, mergers, acquisitions, and divestments, as well as significant outsourcing of non-core capabilities. These may also include the use of scenario planning that may put the current function and purpose of the organization to question, depending upon which scenario occurs. As part of your planning and decision-making process, we suggest you use our equation for success. This is a way of evaluating your potential implementation plans to see if they have all the parts necessary to increase their chances of completion and success. For organizational change to be successful, you need to be looking at 6 elements. The first is measurement. You must have a robust and clear measurement system not only to be measuring the success of your implementation plan, but the success of your organization. The second element is technique, that is, using the right level 1, 2, 3, or 4 techniques appropriately and in the right way so you get the right kind of effects you want. The third is alignment, which is what we'll talk about in just a bit. The fourth element is control. That is, do you have sufficient power and techniques necessary to actually accomplish the tasks and plans you have decided upon? The fifth element is focused persistence. That is, do you use good project management techniques when you develop and implement your plan? The sixth element is consensus. That is, do objectives agree to the extent your stakeholders and your organization really want to be implementing this change, its goals, and its objectives? Let me elaborate here on the element of alignment. There has been much discussion in organizational change about all parts of the organization must be aligned. Here I'm more specific about what that might mean. The plan of action, organizational systems such as structure, information, work process, and employee selection, the change you are putting in place, and the business situations and goals all need to be reinforcing each other and pointed in the same direction. It is simply not enough to persuade people with the PowerPoint presentation that whatever change you are contemplating is important and they need to follow along. To be successful, alignment needs to be deeper than that. All elements need to be present. You can execute some elements very well, but if you ignore just one of them, you will be unlikely to be successful. These elements can compensate for each other somewhat, but all must exist for change to be implemented. For more information, please look at the various links below. It describes our model in more detail and also describes Consensus Builder, our software for helping you accomplish proper strategy and good organizational change.